Hello and welcome to this week's weekly missions roundtable. This is the West Coast, Best Coast, MTW Hub. I'm going to say it until it sticks. I am Ali Hazrati, the glue that holds them together, keeps them in line, And introduce yourselves, guys. Who are you, Anthony?
I am Anthony. Last name is English. Assistant Director of the West Coast Hub. I am the sidekick for Ali, the number 2. Also to Mike, I'm just the sidekick, I guess. No, but listen, I'm excited to be with y'all. Welcome to another wonderful week. And yeah, we love y'all. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Anthony English. And who are you, Mr. Mike?
I'm Mike Pettengill, the chief troublemaker for the West Coast Hub.
That's 100% true. We are so glad that y'all joined us today, because we are going to be sharing about our favorite female missionaries. And none of us picked the same one, because there's a lot of awesome ladies serving the Lord out and around this beautiful world. So, Mike, kick us off, my friend. Who is your favorite female missionary besides your beautiful wife, Erin?
Oh, that was my favorite female missionary. Oh, I can't use her. Well, anyways, shout out to her. She had mad skills on the mission field, because she was like, man, people say, dude, you went to some crazy places, did some crazy things in the mission field. I'm like, yeah, I just carried my wife's bags, man. And that's what I was good for. So she was a rock star. So Erin Pettengill, look her up. So other than Erin Pettengill and Ali Hazrati, my third favorite female missionary is Gladys Aylwood. And so I like her because of her heart and her chutzpah. So she was a short little lady, right? And she was from Great Britain, and she just kind of walked in the door of a mission sending agency and had her bag packed and said, I want to go to China. And they wanted to hold her back as a single female going into China, and she's like, I'm ready to go. And so Gladys took that long train journey, believe it or not, into China, and she did some awesome stuff as a single female. And she did a lot of language work. She did a lot of work with kids. One of the kind of things, she's kind of an early social justice warrior. One of the big things that she was involved in at the time was she was a foot inspector, right? So she went around in China when they were still binding women's feet, which is a pretty gross little process where they basically crush a woman's foot. So her feet are a Chinese woman's foot is at the time in the 19th and early 20th century was supposed to be petite and adorable and cute. And so they basically crushed them and then manipulated the bones so that they could have this desirable trait. And it caused lifelong pain for these women. And they could never unbind their feet because they would be functional. So she went around and she was a foot inspector to stop the binding of women's feet in China. And when she was there, she was there before the beginning of World War II, but when Japan entered into World War II, they started invading China. And you look at it now and you think politically that's kind of goofy, but China's so big, right? But China was so poor at the time. And a rich powerhouse country like Japan could take over China. And at one point in her during the invasion by Japan, she single-handedly swooped up 100 foster kids and kids that had been separated from their parents during this invasion, and she cared for them, and she marched them to freedom, and she was the one that was responsible for this, right? So she did all this in the early 1900s when women just didn't do that kind of stuff, right? And she was bold, and she was dedicated to the Lord. There was a movie made of her life called the Inn of the Sixth Happiness, and this movie, she lived to see this movie made, and was embarrassed to death of this movie, because she was a really short, frumpy, dark-haired woman, right? And her character was played by Ingrid Bergman, and who was a beautiful, tall, blonde Swedish lady. And in the movie, Ingrid Bergman, playing Gladys Aylwood, had a romantic relationship with a military officer, and Gladys Aylwood was so mortified by that. She had remained chaste her entire life, was never married, never involved with men, dedicated completely to the Lord. And so, because this gorgeous, tall, blonde Swede played her and had a love interest in the movie, she was horrified by it. But the movie came out in 1957. It's a cool movie to watch. Just know that Gladys Aylwood didn't like that whole aspect of it, but it tells a good part of her life. There's also a couple of awesome books. One's just called Gladys Aylwood. It's called The Little Woman. One's called Gladys Aylwood, A Life for China, talking about how she gave her life to China to bring the Lord to China. And I the reason why I tell that story about Ingrid Bergman and the movie is that's Gladys Aylwood's heart, to be embarrassed to be played by a gorgeous starlet in Hollywood. She was so humble. She had given her life to the Lord, and to have that be a focal point of her life upset her. And the fact that it would be portrayed in a fictitious way, that she was dedicated to anything other than the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, upset her greatly. So take a look at that movie, understand the parts about it that Gladys didn't like. Take a look at some of those awesome books, and there's other ones out there too, but Gladys Aylwood right there.
That's so cool. Thank you for sharing. I learned a lot. I like these things. We learn too. Okay, so my favorite female missionary is my dear friend Shireen in Turkey. She took me in from day one. She and her family. She was my first discipler. Is that the right way to say it? I remember asking her on a bus because I just thought she was so cool. I was like, would you have time or be willing to just teach me your ways? Because I just think you're awesome. She and her husband and family had served in a difficult country in Central Asia previously before I'd met them, and like boiled the water to like drink, and like the hardcore stuff that was just awesome, mended their clothes at a time when you didn't have to do that. And she and her husband raised 3 wonderful children on the mission field. But what really stood out, the few things that really stood out to me with Shireen are her heart just for people. Like, she's all in on the place where God's put her. She's such a big encourager, and that even if I like figured out the right buses to get to like their house, which I know now kind of sounds stupid, but it was a really big deal because there are so many buses in Istanbul that run all the time, and I got lost all the time. But when I finally like figured out the route, she like was the biggest encourager and so exciting. And with language too, she learned 3 languages to serve other people, and she speaks them much better than she admits that she does. But just always encouraged me in language learning as well, and to laugh at my mistakes, because everybody makes mistakes in languages almost every day, even in our own languages. So it's only worse in other languages. But I think too, just like her heart for me and taking me in as a single gal living overseas, and she and her family invited me to Christmas to go skiing with them. And that was just one of the sweetest moments. And her family still has a picture of that time on their mantle. And her kids are always like, Allie's always trying to get into our family. And they mean it in a good way, but I just really felt like they took Christian hospitality to a whole new meaning in Christian love. Shireen did. So thank you. You're awesome. I hope you watch this because you're amazing. Anthony, what about you, my friend?
Wait, before Anthony goes, here I want to give a proviso. Allie has no idea I'm going to do this. So Anthony and I picked people they wrote biographies about, right? And before we filmed this, Allie started apologizing. I'm just going to pick my friend who's this awesome missionary, and with a tone of she's nobody, right? That's the kind of story I love to hear. I love to hear the missionaries that none of us are going to know their name about, who went out of their way, because missionaries eat their young, man. I mean, missionaries sadly aren't immune from not mentoring and not guiding other missionaries and not helping other people. But I'm going to guess this gal didn't have she wasn't from the same denomination as Allie. She didn't and didn't have the exact same beliefs about certain theological issues. But this is the kind of missionary I love to hear about, is someone that loves the Lord so much that they're going to come across this weird, strange 20-something-year-old gal that has no idea what she's doing and picks her up and swoops her up and helps her ministry without any sort of pride of ownership or anything. Sorry. All right, Anthony.
Oh, that's the best.
What do you got going, Anthony? Talk to us.
Yeah, guys. So mine is Betsy Stockton, actually. Betsy Stockton, African-American female missionary, and was one of the first single missionaries of the modern era. She was born in Princeton, New Jersey, 1798. And I have a bunch of facts. Her story is crazy. There's so much. I'm going to try to condense everything, just give you the ESPN highlights of her life, so to speak. But her mother was a slave, and she was owned by a Presbyterian couple, actually. But this is the cool thing. The Presbyterian couple, and it was Reverend Green, Ashbel Green and his wife. The Presbyterian couple were staunch abolitionists. So they never intended to keep her. They got her and her mother, and eventually they would free her, but not just free her. She had a passion for global missions. And I'm going to read a quick section. It was so awesome. But not only did they free her, but they gave her some of the support raising that she needed. It was like, go. She had a heart for Africa. She really felt called to take the gospel to Africa. And I want to read something right here. Betsy also began growing in her love and interest in global missions. She had a worldview shared by the Greens, which are the Presbyterian couple who the husband was a pastor, and the church, that was rooted in the soil of God's love in Jesus Christ for the whole world, and that salvation was only found in Christ. Despite her life conditions, she believed with all her being that it is the sacred duty of Christians to offer themselves in humble obedience to God's call to carry the gospel of Christ, the gospel of his salvation, to all the world, to those who had not yet heard. And this growing missions conviction really shaped her prayers and her heart. So despite she would learn more and grow, and yet never lost that zeal for Christ. So eventually she does get to Africa around the 1820s, around 1824, 1826-ish. She goes, she gets to the mission field, she's serving there, and eventually she comes back to America. And I love this too. She was a part of a church planting team, and she started a small school for small children in Philadelphia, and helped to form, I believe, what was the name of it? The first African-American Presbyterian church in 1848. So this woman is amazing. Again, this is the highlights, just brief highlights. But I mean, she is a slave, gets sold to a Presbyterian couple who was like, oh yeah, we'll take her. Yeah, we need a good slave. But unbeknownst to people, were like, oh, we about to free you. What's up? And then she tells this Presbyterian couple, I have a heart for missions. And instead of them saying no, they're like, go for it. They free her, give her the money to go. She goes. Y'all, this is crazy, right? So not only the Presbyterian couple, cool, like by being abolitionists, but then they're like, we also gonna be your supporters too. You know what I mean? They train her in the ways of the Lord. They show her dignity and worth, and she goes and she serves, and she comes back and she helps to plant the first ever Black Presbyterian church in America. Yo, that's dope. Betsy Stockton, she is the business. So Betsy in heaven, Wakanda forever. Love her, love her, love her, love her, love her, love her. So there. By the way, if you want to know more about her story, this book right here, Profiles of African American Missionaries. This is where I got it from. Such a great story.
Thank you, Anthony, and thank you, Mike. Those are awesome stories. And if you're listening, and if you know some awesome women missionaries, we would love to hear their stories. Write their names, send us links. We'd love to hear more and interact with you. And if you want to learn more about my friend, she and her husband are still currently serving on the mission field, and hopefully I can post information soon. But thank you all so much for joining us today. If you would like to hear more about missions, or if you're a woman feeling the call towards global missions, fill out the Get Started with MTW link either above or below, wherever you're watching. And we would love to talk to you about just how you can do that. All right, hope to see y'all next week. Bye.